Hello everybody, I hope you are all well. Welcome to my sewing room. My name's Diane, and if you're new, each week I come into my sewing room and I share with you everything that I've been doing the previous week. There's a lot to get through this week, so I even have notes. Got my glasses, got my coffee, got my notes. So if you've got a few minutes to spend and you want to chat about quilty things, please make yourself comfy and join us. So I think we'll start with the Fibonacci quilt. If you saw last week's video, I designed the quilt and I set you a sort of design puzzle. I hadn't put the flimsy together. I'd made all the blocks, but as you can see, it's finished. I put a border on, so I think we'll start with that. I sandwiched the quilt together and I used a black backing. I already had the black fabric in that I'd bought for another project, so I'll have to buy some more, but I had that, so I used that and I just quilted it in a simple crosshatch, and I'll show you that. And this is my quilt finished. So the Fibonacci sequence is something that I taught my pupils while I was at school. Often I used to squeeze it into an art session, especially if I was teaching something like Vincent van Gogh and you looked at the sunflowers, a sunflower head with all the seeds. You can see there's a prime example of the Fibonacci sequence. You can see the way that the spiral that comes around forms the sequence. So let's have a quick close-up of the Fibonacci quilt so that you can see all of the beautiful colours. Like I say, I just had a simple crosshatch and then I added my label. Oh, and a little side note before we move on to the next topic. Free motion quilting. I promise I will have a go in 2025. I will take you on that journey with me if you are interested. I'm not going to attempt it yet because I've got lots of other things that I'm busy doing and I want to have the time to approach that calmly and when I'm in the right frame of mind, which isn't now because it's a bit crazy here at the moment. But yes, I haven't forgotten. I've taken all of your advice on board. Again, I've kept notes and I will start that in 2025. So, and before I finish talking about the Fibonacci quilt, Janet commented and said, wouldn't it look nice in Halloween fabric? Well, it would, wouldn't it? It would look nice in any sort of themed fabric. I was thinking a harvest one. So you could put even something like a scarecrow, or you could put where the smaller blocks are, you could put those, you know, they have the bottling jars, don't they? You could have pies, pumpkins, all sorts of things. So yes, any theme would work in that, I think. Very nice. Janet from Jacksonville, Florida also mentioned, wouldn't it be nice if we showed on my channel people's quilts that they'd made? So I do know that quite a few people have said they're making quilts that I've designed, and wouldn't it be nice to have a show, or any of your own quilts would look nice. I don't know how to go about doing that. I know that Sherry McGill on Lessons Learned on a Friday, she has Finish It Friday, where people send in images of their quilts to share. If you're interested in me doing something like that, let me know, and if you know how I should do it, let me know. I am doing Sherry McGill's current Wednesday sew along. Block 2 came out today. I won't tell you what it is in case you haven't seen it. Last week was hearts, so I am doing that one, and I will send in a picture of my quilt to Sherry when I've finished it. It's going to be smaller than Sherry's. Hers is going to be a big one. I'm doing a smaller one for Project Liner, so I'm following the designs in each row, but I'm making it smaller. So I will have to find out how to do that to send one to Sherry. But if that's something you're interested in, sharing your designs here, let me know and I'll see what we can do about that. Now I'd like to talk about labelling, and lots of you commented about what you put on your quilts for your labels, and I'll share that with you. Some of it's really interesting. So I think really labelling all depends on the purpose of the quilt. So if you are making it for friends or family, you might put a personal note on the back. You might put your name on. You might not put anything on at all if it's for personal use. If you are entering quilts into the AQS show quilts, then any of the big shows, they have their own requirements for labels. But I'll share with you what that's the name that she writes her comments with. But this is what said. She puts on, or he, who pieced it, who quilted it, the date it was finished, who is it for, the occasion it was given, so if it's a gift or something, a wedding maybe, the pattern name if there is one, the name of the designer if there isn't a pattern, and then the name of the quilt. So that was what said. And Patricia commented, and she said, depending again on the quilt, depends on the label. So if it's for personal use, she might just put her name and a date. But Patricia makes reproduction quilts, and she says, and on their labels they have a story, so sometimes their labels resemble an essay. So I suppose if you're talking about a quilt that was a commemorative quilt for a particular time in history, then that's the story of the event itself. So perhaps that's included, and then perhaps why Patricia wanted to make that reproduction quilt. So again, something slightly different. And then Kerry said, this is quite nice, especially for someone in my position. Kerry puts her first name, her maiden name, and then her married name. And then she puts the date of completion. She says, made with love, and who it is made for. Well, if you are like me and the boys have sort of been bred out of the line, my maiden name is fast disappearing. And so my married name is on my quilt. But yeah, that's quite a nice thing, isn't it, to put your maiden name on? It sort of keeps the family name going. So that's another option. That was really interesting. And then Caitlin, she said that she had some custom made labels from a seller on Etsy, and she has her own logo, and so she had that put on. So that's the labels finished. And as we've touched on patterns on labels, there's something else I want to just quickly chat about. Rochelle contacted me and asked if there was a quilt pattern to my chandelier quilt. Well, when I design quilts, I just use a gridded square bit of paper. Let me grab one. So I don't design formal patterns, but what I do is I use this gridded paper, and each of the tiny squares will represent a size, so 2 inch, 3 inch, whatever. And then I just work out my designs as I go. I mean, there's just too many, oh, that's a nice one. Ooh, a sort of sampler with a star. I'd forgotten about that one. Anyway, so there are just, you know, this is what I do. So I don't feel the need really to have any more equipment to make a pattern with. I did look at buying the EQ8 pattern maker, and it's really expensive. I will sort of put a price on if I can find out how much it is here in the UK. But I don't want to be sitting for long periods of time at the computer. I did that when I was working, and I don't really want to spend my time doing that. I like to sit at my sewing machine for long periods of time, but yeah, so I don't think I'll be going down that route. But there are plenty of designers out there that are giving away free patterns, and Frederica contacted and said that the chandelier quilt that I made a couple of weeks ago was similar to the Hanging Gardens, which was a cozy quilt design. So I passed that information on to Rochelle. Like I said, there's loads and loads of free patterns out there. And also when I made that chandelier quilt and I just sort of fiddled the on-point squares, the triangles, the missing triangles, Robin commented and said there is a Robert Kaufman app out there, and it's brilliant for working out the side setting of triangles if you're making on point patterns. So I don't think I'll ever make a formal pattern design because there's plenty of other people that are doing that and they are experts in their fields, and so I'm quite happy just to do these gridded designs. And I do put those on my community page. Somebody else commented and said, where can I find your community page? Well, it's on my homepage on my YouTube channel. So if you click onto my homepage and you scroll along, you'll see community. And if you hit that button, all of the letters that I've put on the community page are there. And then I put a brief little note, a picture usually of the quilt and then the design and the blocks. So if anybody wants them, you can download that, print that off. So that's the patterns finished. We've got still lots to get through. So moving on. And so the next thing I want to cover is buying fabric from the US. But before I do that, I just thought, well, if it's so cheaper, why? And often people can offer their goods cheaper if they're selling lots of it. So you don't need such a big profit margin. So I looked at the Craft Industry Alliance report that was conducted on May the 14th, 2024. So it's quite current. It was a comprehensive study. There were 37,000 quilters that responded to the survey, which took approximately 66 minutes to complete. 93% of the respondents were from the USA, 5% from Canada and 1% from elsewhere. So from what I can gather, if you belong to a quilting society or a quilting circle, or if you are subscribed to quilting magazines, you might have been asked to complete this survey. But the results showed that the quilting market is expected to reach $5 billion by 2027. And it said that that market is driven by a consumer passionate base. Well, we are very passionate about our hobby. It said there are 85 million active creators in the US and Canada. And an active creative is defined as an individual who has made a creative project in the last 12 months. So that's a lot of people, much more than in the UK. And I think that's probably part of the reason why fabric here is quite expensive in comparison. So this topic began a couple of weeks ago. I shared with you online some fabric that Estella had sent me. She'd bought fabric from Missouri Star. She's based and lives in England, and she'd bought some fabric from Missouri Star that she wasn't going to use, so she sent it to me so I could make some quilts for Project Linus. I've made the top of one. I'll show you that next week. And so she sent me this fabric, and then that got other people asking about the cost, because if you go onto some of these fabric outlets online in the US, United States of America, USA, it's so much cheaper than here. And so Margaret contacted me and said she was worried about buying online because of the cost of postage, packaging and import taxes. And so I did some research, and some of you have kindly sent in your experiences. So let me just share the recent one. Madeleine, based in the UK, she'd ordered from two American companies. She'd ordered from Jordan Fabrics, and they charged a small fee for postage and package. She said about the same as ordering in the UK. And she ordered also from the Fat Quarter Shop, and they charged a lot more, increasing the cost by between 25% to 30%. But she came up with a really important point. She said, please be aware of possible credit card charges if you're using a credit card to buy overseas transactions. Some of the charges on the credit cards are extortionate. So that's something else to bear in mind. And I can't go into details about that because everybody will be different, have different circumstances. So you're probably thinking, why bother? Why do we want to go and buy fabric in the USA when we've got fewer, but we do have fabric shops here? And I think really Kerry summed it up. She said many years ago she went to Florida on a holiday, and she said she walked into a fabric store and it was like a child in a sweet shop. She just fell in love with all of the fabrics. She wasn't quilting or sewing at the time. She taught herself how to hand sew and then go on to quilt. And then when she was holidaying, going back and holidaying, she was going to the fabric shops, taking her family with her and filling her suitcases full of fabric and bringing it home. And now she doesn't go off to America as often, but her husband goes over and buys fabric for her, sometimes on his visits. But she also said that she'd noticed over the years that some of the fabric shops in America are going less on the fabric ranges. So that was one of the things that we admired as UK quilters, is the range that you've got. And she said they're selling more threads now in some of the shops that he visits. So there is reasons why we might want to look outside if it could be cost effective. And so I looked then at Missouri Star and shipping and costs and things like that. So they have 3 flat rates to choose from. So if you're buying goods up to $100, then you have to pay shipping at $30. So that goes on top. If your order is between $100 and $200, you have to pay $40 on top. If it's over $200, you have to pay $50 on top. And they use FedEx International Economy, and they say they expect the orders to be shipped internationally between 3 and 10 business days. So you've got those charges for post and packaging and delivery on top of whatever your fabric costs. And then there's a note about customs and duties. It says Missouri Star pays for all duties for international orders, but there is a note. Occasionally, international customers have to pay extra local fees for customs, which vary from country to country. Missouri Star recommend that you research policies specific to your country. And you're probably thinking, whoa, that's quite expensive, isn't it? Post and packaging. But I have recently sold a quilt to a lovely lady in Canada, and it cost almost £30 to send that, £29 something to send that off, and it was less than 2 kilograms in weight. It was classed as a small parcel. So generally, post and packaging, if you're in the UK or USA, is expensive. There's no getting around that. But I think what the most confusing thing about doing this research is, sometimes you seem to be hit by VAT or an extra customs duty, and sometimes you don't. People have commented that they've had to pay extra, and others have said it's arrived within a couple of days and it's similar postage to you would expect to pay in the UK. So I went online and had a look, and it says if there is a surcharge and you need to pay extra, it says you'll be contacted by Royal Mail or the courier company if you need to pay any VAT, duty or delivery charges to receive your goods. They say you'll receive a bill stating how much you need to pay. They'll hold the parcel for 3 weeks, so the Royal Mail will hold on to it. But if it's not paid, the outstanding amount, it will be returned to the sender. So when I looked at the VAT charges for the UK, it said VAT will be charged on all goods over £39. And that should be paid to the delivery company before you receive the goods. It's charged on the total package value, including the value of the goods, the post and packaging, and the insurance, and any duty you owe. So I think that's why Missouri Star pay for that, because it's all included, and otherwise you'll be getting hit with a VAT charge here. So it was a little bit of a minefield looking at VAT and duties and things like that. But I think basically if you're buying from a big company and they cover those costs, then you should be okay. But just be aware of how you're paying. You might have a charge on your credit card if you're buying on that. So check that. And if you are caught with an extra bill, the companies will hold it for you for 3 weeks. So I think there are some bargains to be had in the USA, but there are also some very good bargains to have in the UK. So if you want to shop around and spend the time online looking, you can find bargains. And that was one of the things that survey said, that people are looking around more, buying online, looking for bargains because of the cost of inflation, the way it's pushing fabrics up, and people are using from their stash. Talking of using from stash, I now am preparing the quilts to take to Project Linus. I'm off to Project Linus at the beginning of next week, so I'm just getting those quilts together and I'll show you what quilts I'm taking there. So there is this one, a log cabin. This one, the Harlequin. Jelly Roll Rainbow. Teen Spirit. The Hourglass. Scrappy, scrappy. And it's got a scrappy back. So the Project Linus quilts have their own labels. They're all sewn to the back. They've all been washed. They're ready to go. So I'll take those off. I will collect some more labels. And I have just finished a flimsy for another Project Linus quilt. I used 2 5-inch charm packs. I'd never used charm packs before, and so I just wondered how big a quilt I could get if I only used the 5-inch charm packs. And they were 2 identical packets. There were 42 pieces in each packet, and so I've put them together to make a top, and I'll get that finished for next week. I'll have a label on that, and I'm also working on Sherry McGill's Sew Along, so that's ongoing. I'm enjoying that, and that's it for this week. Like I say, we talk about all things quilty, and I don't often have notes with me, but that was something we were interested in. So if there are particular things that you're interested in and want to know more about, if you have a shout out to the quilty community, there are some lovely people out there that will offer their ideas and I will share them with you. So that's it for this week. Please enjoy your sewing this weekend. Take really good care of yourselves. And I will see you next week with the Charm Pack surprise. Don't know what to call that one. Oh, Mellow Yellow. That's the name. It's got to be something about Mellow Yellow. Anyway, have a lovely week and I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.